Hello and welcome to CKZ. I'm your host, Kent, along with my pal Caitlin and Whitney and Zach. What's going on, guys? How are you tonight?
It's cold.
Right. Yeah,
it is very cold.
And with the 70 degree,
yeah.
70 degrees the day before, that's just a tease. That's rude.
Right.
I'm feeling it.
Polar vortex is unleashing its cold air upon the United States. It's going to be a cold March, I hear, guys. Are you prepared for more mass raids on the grocery store and eggs and bread and milk? And
do you have all your toilet paper?
So you have a grocery store fighting shoes and pants on, ready to go. It gets wild out there.
I switched to pickup, so that has saved my life.
Oh, yeah.
Pickup is just, that's the best thing to come out of the pandemic is pickup.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are so happy that you guys are here with us tonight. We've got a great episode coming up for you. Jennifer and Trevor Hands, or she goes by Jenny, I should say, from the United Methodist Church are here to talk about the vote that they recently have on disaffiliating from the United Methodist Church, and what the letter that came out with it meant, with the global United Methodist Church, what that means and kind of what the future is there. So we're just going to have an open conversation. It's kind of what the show is. It's a personal conversation between us, the hosts, and everybody that joins us. So again, we're glad you're here. And we're also going to talk a little bit about what's going on around Garden City and the state of Kansas. First, we have a new segment. It's called the Rumor Mill. Zach, your intro.
You're going to have to do an intro soon. Rumor alert.
Rumor alert. So rumor has it the Heritage Inn next to Parrot Cove is having some structural issues and is closing here within the next week. So that'll be interesting to see what happens there, and
Okay.
that, and what happens to Parrot Cove. I do understand that I think the pool heater hasn't worked for quite a while in Parrot Cove and some other things. So some of the maintenance hasn't been kept up.
Water was ice cold.
Yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what's going on there. So we're keeping a close eye on that because it's a big part of the Star Bond and the Sports of the World expansion that's supposed to be happening out there too. So
it seems to happen a lot out here where we get something nice and it dilapidates extremely quickly because the interest just doesn't hold the way it's supposed to.
Or alternatively, people aren't being paid enough to maintain the structure.
And that was what I was going to lead into, is I don't think that we have affordable enough living and high enough wages in Garden City to maintain quality people in our area to run these facilities. All the quality people end up at different places and niche places, and the box stores are stuck with everything else.
Well, and as we talked about last time too, I mean, the housing issue as a whole. I mean, that's if there's no place to live, especially affordable for if you're on that type of income, how can you be here?
There's also rumor that corners were cut during construction phases that have led to what's going on out there to make it easier for this build. But
if the owners own the construction company and they do a shoddy job on their own stuff, can you imagine all the houses and everything they built?
Hey, don't be connecting those dots.
Nobody needs to be opening cans of worms. Anyways, that's all just rumor at the moment. But,
that's all just rumor at the moment.
If you notice an empty parking lot at Parrot Cove, it wasn't a rumor.
You heard it here first. CKZ. Oh my gosh! Okay. So have you guys been following the Kansas House and Senate here lately?
Just a smidge. It's very frustrating.
It is very frustrating. It's extremely hard to keep up and follow. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that later on in the show. But first, a little word from our sponsor. And we are back and starting us off with events in Garden City. Zach, what's going on around Garden City?
So we got a couple things going on this week, specifically Saturday to focus on, which is going to be Sand and Sage Rifle and Pistol Club annual collector show. I guess they do this every year. So come join us for the annual collector show. There will be guns, ammo, coins, rocks, jewelry, stamps, antiques, crafts, artifacts, collectibles, and so much more. We have concessions in the show building. This is February 26th, starting at 9 to 6. And February 27th, 9 to 4:30. Admission for adults is $10, and children 12 and under are free. With an adult, the price is good for both days. All right.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah. So it's going to be down at the I always call it the 3i building, and anybody who's a Garden City native does. But it's the Fitty County Exhibition Building.
Yeah. It's just lots of things just sounds about like for everybody, stamps, antiques, crafts, artifacts, kids, coins, guns, ammo.
Find an action figure or two.
Yeah. Sounds like a good time. So check that out. Lee Richardson Zoo has a story time. Something fun for the younglings out there. If you didn't know, every Monday at 10:30 a.m. At the FinUp Center, you can hear a story, then meet an animal, and follow it up with making a craft for children from birth to preschool, and meet their caregivers, which is pretty cool. So check that out at Lee Richardson Zoo, Mondays at 10:30 a.m.
Southwest Kansas boxing event. This amateur Olympic style event that ranges from youth to as young as 8 years old to adults with no age limit, rather. The event will take place at the fairgrounds in the West Pavilion on February 25th. Tickets are $20 per person. For more information, contact Judy or Juan at 620-805-2594.
I would like to insert an event that's not on the list. I help do one of the Girl Scout troops out here. We've got the older middle school girls and younger high school girls. And so through cookie season, we are stationed this next Saturday. We're stationed at Sam's Club. So if you're out and about doing your activities, stop by there and get you some cookies, $5 a box. We'll be there from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. So
nice.
When you're shopping.
Any new flavors or anything this year?
It's changed quite a bit over the last year, but you got to order them online. So if you want to do that, hit me up for an online link, and it still goes to our troop. The boxes do, but it's like a raspberry. It's like the Thin Mint, but the cookie inside is raspberry instead of chocolate and mint.
Ooh.
Pretty luxurious.
You are allowed to interject events with cookie information.
Yes.
Anytime.
Everybody loves. It's so funny because I tell this story all the time. We have this one now called Toastiers, and they're shaped like little toast pieces, and they taste like French toast, and it's very like hit or miss. Like people either hate them or they love them, and then they buy all of them. So you guys got to try that one.
Absolutely. So that's at Sam's Club this weekend.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Saturday.
Yep. Get your Thin Mints, your Thin Patty. What's the peanut butter sandwich cookies?
Peanut butter patties. Yeah, those are our favorite too.
My favorites.
Ooh, we have an Adventureful as well, which is like a brownie cookie with a caramel on top and sea salt sprinkled on the top.
Ooh.
Brilliant.
Lord, there goes the figure.
Good thing it's seasonal.
So here in just a few moments, we'll be back with Jenny and Trevor Hands. But again, another word from one of our other sponsors tonight.
Hello, guys.
Hello.
Hello.
There we go.
Hi. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah. Thanks for
having us.
Yep.
Absolutely. Okay, so we can get right into it. How long have you guys been with the United Methodist Church? You're both members?
Yes, we're both members. You can answer that first.
I pretty much was born in the church. I spent 12 years away when I was in school, but other than I've pretty much been there my whole life.
Out in Finney County here?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
We started dating in 2012, and I started attending church probably after a month of dating, maybe not even that, not too long. And I actually just became a member a few months ago, probably around 6 months
end of
ago.
2022.
Yeah. But I'd been attending a long time.
Good 10 years under the belt.
Yeah. It's been my home church for quite a while.
Yeah. And so how do you transition from a non-member into a member? What?
So it's a pretty simple membership class that just goes over what the United Methodist Church believes. And you just have to say whether or not you agree to those. I guess it's a yes. If you don't agree, you probably don't get to become a member. But
Sure.
Nobody ever.
For various reasons.
They just go a little more in depth and answer any questions you have. It was over a course of 3 weeks, I believe, and probably
Okay.
an hour to 2 hours each meeting time. So there's definitely some significant like teaching and learning going on
Right.
in that class
Okay.
before you know.
But nothing as
convert.
intense as like what is it? What's it called for the Catholic catechism?
Yeah,
Nothing
Yeah.
quite
not
that.
quite that process.
Is it like theological learning, or sort of learning as well how the church interacts with the community, or kind of all of that?
Yeah, so there's a portion on history, just
Oh, wow.
from the beginning, how we started, through how the church just operates, and then also what the church believes. So, yeah, theological and just your everyday stuff you need to know of, if how these things work, such as a disaffiliation vote.
Okay.
Right? Which
But
of course we're going to talk about. But
Yeah. So if you are a member, does that mean that you qualify for a vote, or is a voting membership different?
no, when you're a member, then you are able to vote.
Okay.
So, in our church, similar to like in the I'm not actually. There's lots of different churches, and they all have different rules, obviously. But in our church, 7th graders go through the confirmation class. I did not grow up in a church that did that, so I still have to keep that all straight. And after that's a full year, and after that, then they are members as well. So after you've either gone through the membership class as like an adult, or done confirmation as a 7th grade, or you can do it at any age. The youngest age they can do it is 7th grade.
Okay.
Okay. And so are those also voting members? They get to vote.
They are also voting
Oh,
members.
great.
Okay. Out of curiosity, is there a way to where you lose membership? I know sometimes people kind of fade in and out of church throughout their life, and I was wondering, like, if somebody's out for 2 years, do they still get a vote now? If there's
Unless they request to be removed, they're basically still considered a member.
a member, okay.
Unless you go to another church and request to
That makes sense.
transfer.
In our church, that's the case.
Right.
Okay.
There
But
has been some discussion around that. The actual book of discipline says if we have not seen you for 1 year, we send you a letter and say, hey,
What's
we
going
haven't
on?
seen you. Where are you? We miss you. If we don't see you for another year, you will no longer be a member here. And so then there's a second year, but then there's my understanding there's still a third year in which it actually gets voted on at the annual church conference to actually say goodbye. And if you
So
come one Sunday in those 3 years, you're back in and good.
okay,
Okay.
gotcha. So one Sunday's then you're in. Okay. So you just mentioned the Book of Discipline, and honestly, I didn't know that the Book of Discipline existed until I saw a Facebook post about our local vote, and I was like, "What the heck's going on?" Could you explain a little bit what the Book of Discipline is for those that aren't in the know?
Sure. Yeah. So, like the Book of Discipline, it was written in 1784, so very early on in the church history. Basically, I mean, the way I would compare it to is if you have another organization with bylaws and articles of incorporation. I mean, it's just basically the beliefs, the standards, the canon law, and doctrines that they believe in, and you want to adhere to be in good standing or whatever. So that's organizational, bylaws are about the closest thing that I could relate.
It's very exciting.
Yeah. No, I mean, it makes sense to have.
Yeah.
So it's like you said, more about the organizational or the structure of, rather than.
It does also list the beliefs of the United Methodist Church. And when we say the Book of Discipline, it's not just Garden City First United Methodist Church's Book of Discipline. This is an international Book of Discipline. So not even a national level. It is international.
It's
Okay.
anybody who's in the UMC basically.
Mhm.
Yes.
Okay. I had a question. It went away. Caitlin, you got anything?
Yeah. Okay. So regarding the voting that's taking place, is there a requirement on the church's side, in locally or state wise or national wise? What is the requirement of the church when a vote occurs? Like, is there a notification period? Do you guys have time to educate yourselves about the vote?
Yeah. So me go back just a little bit. I had a unique opportunity to get to be one of our church's 2 delegates to go to our annual conference this year. And so this whole conversation has been going on since the 70s, really.
Okay.
But just recently, I mean, in the past few years,
Go ahead.
it keeps being a topic of conversation.
Sure.
And this question of disaffiliation was a huge topic of conversation at annual conference. And each church has the choice whether or not to have a vote like what we are experiencing in Garden City. So no church is required to vote on disaffiliation. That's not something that's going through every United Methodist Church. And after attending, I had known about it. There were some things I felt I had not understood, and I felt the rest of our church maybe had not understood, just about the timeline. And because, as we'll talk later, the opportunity to disaffiliate and keep your building is only open for a certain length of time. And that's what I had not understood. And so after annual conference, the other delegate and I felt strongly. We disagree. I believe we should stay United Methodist, and the other delegate is a leader for wanting to disaffiliate and become a global Methodist church. But we were very united in our thought process that our church needs to make this decision and they need to know all of the details. Okay. So I do feel kind of like an instigator a little bit. We got up and made an announcement about just what we saw at annual conference and how this is a concern and we want everyone to know about it. And so we recommended then that our church council begin discussions about the disaffiliation. And in that we said, we want a place where information is gathered, where people can find it easily. We want to make sure that there's plenty of opportunity for people to ask questions and for those answers, to not be biased and get the actual correct answer. And we were very clear about what we wanted in that. And I really do commend our church and our church body. I think we did a very good job of educating. So that really started, we got back in July, or that event was it June or July? I get so confused. Summer. It was summertime.
Yeah.
Once we got back and we made our announcement, we started really right away with developing a committee, which I was also on, to present both sides of the issue. And then we had a series of Q&A sessions that were just open for any church member to come. There was also a Facebook group that really anyone could be a part of, where questions were asked, resources were shared, and you could debate them if you wanted to on that digital platform. So I feel like there was a lot of opportunity to learn. With that, there were a lot of voices, and there's every time you get more voices, you get more opportunity for incorrect information as well, or maybe not incorrect.
That's a great
question. So there was a lot
with the okay, so from an outsider's perspective, we just see basically an argument between being pro LGBTQIA plus or anti LGBTQIA plus. So what is the difference? What other differences are there between the global and UMC? And also, what are the differences towards what is the exact opinion that's causing this division right now with the LGBTQIA plus?
Okay. So as far as other things, that's one of the most interesting pieces to me about this conversation. The Book of Discipline, which we talked about, only gives one paragraph, one article for disaffiliation right now. And that can only be based on disagreements of issues of human sexuality. That is the only reason that you can be disaffiliating under this paragraph. So this is one of my like soapbox moments, but
Sure.
any
Please.
other part of the conversation does not follow the guidelines set forth in the Book of Discipline. So any other discussion, although it feels relevant, truly is not, if that makes sense. So it can only be about views on human sexuality. And that paragraph is only, I forget the date, that paragraph only applies to disaffiliating and having the entire process complete by December 31st of this year. And that paragraph gives our church, or any church that's considering this, the opportunity to leave with your building and your assets. So disaffiliating any other time, you could still disaffiliate, but you would not get to keep the church building because the United Methodist Church owns the church building.
Okay. So in the end, this comes down to the massive amount. Well, real estate's expensive, so that's that's huge. Plus
it is, and money is a huge part of this discussion. So it is hard to separate that from the issue at hand. But this paragraph very clearly states that is the only reason that you can. So if
separate,
you just feel like this shouldn't be something else. It's not like, I don't know. I'm just saying this because Whitney, you're here. If you feel we should allow dogs to come to church with us and someone else thinks we shouldn't allow the dogs to church, that cannot be the reason.
Right. Yeah. So when it comes to this sexuality thing, is it like is it a limit of they can be members? Is it a limit of they can be leaders or elders or preachers even, or deacon? Is it deacons or is it preacher? There's always different levels. So many different organization patterns.
Sure. Just to kind of go back a little bit, I mean, to answer your question real quick, the only thing that they are that they say is incompatible. Well, they say homosexuality is incompatible with Christian teaching, but what's in the discipline that you could get penalized for is if you performed a gay wedding or hosted a gay wedding, or if you were
a self-avowed practicing homosexual as the pastor
or a bishop. The bishop. Okay. So the bishop is kind of what we have that oversees different parts of the region of the U.S. and stuff like that. So yeah, if you're a bishop or if you're a pastor and you're self-avowed practicing homosexual, that can be penalized under the Book of Discipline. If you host or perform a same-sex wedding in a church, that can be penalized. Those are the only two things that they address. As far as being just a homosexual attending the church, there's nothing in there that's against that. But just to kind of bring that back, I mean, how this whole thing came to be, really in the early 1970s, that's where you started seeing a lot of this violence against LGBTQ people, and that was a really hot issue. And so in 1972's General Conference, we have general conferences every 4 years. So
and this part gets really confusing. This is a lifetime Methodist, and I'm a not very long Methodist. General Conference means international.
Okay.
Annual is our region, which is Kansas and Nebraska. That's the conference I went to.
Okay.
He's talking international.
Okay.
Yeah, the main General Conference. There was a proposal for a statement that said homosexuals are people of sacred worth, and that ended up passing. But then the question was, well, what does that mean? And then along with that passage came another passage that says the practice of homosexuality is incompatible with Christian teaching. And so that from 1972, we've been talking about this ever since. In 76, same-sex marriage was banned. 84, language was added that no self-avowed homosexuals could be ordained. In 88, they banned clergy from performing or hosting the same-sex weddings. And so you got all this stuff happening. And then in 2004, of course, it was the first same-sex marriage that was legal in the U.S. And so in 2015, the U.S. Supreme Court struck down any state bans on same-sex marriages. And so that left bishops and churches kind of like, well, I guess we can do this then. And then, I mean, what the traditionalists are frustrated with is like, we have this code of conduct that we've put in here, and you're, intentionally, violating that code of conduct. Like how, and we're not holding these people responsible. So that's the frustration on that side. Just saying that, we're not holding our bishops and our pastors accountable for what the Book of Discipline says. And so, in the 2016 General Conference, that's when they requested guidance from the bishops on all issues regarding the Book of Discipline. And so that's when they came up with these 3 different plans. There was the traditional plan, there was the simple plan, which was more pro LGBTQ, and then there was the centrist one church plan, which basically would mean that each church can kind of have their own jurisdiction on what do they like. If we here, knowing the region that we're in, would be most likely traditionalist, but then you have Wichita and Kansas City, and those, want to have churches that had performed gay weddings and have the clergy, they would be allowed to do that and still be under the same umbrella of the United Methodist Church. But what the traditionalists are saying is like, no, we do not want to be associated with a church that is allowing that, because it's clear in the Bible that, that this is not compatible with Christian teaching. And of course, really, that's the main issue that I think it's, regardless of the other stuff, it's the interpretation of what that scripture means. And, I was on the other side for quite a long time, but then it just through a lot of process, came to understand it's just like, no, it's like love is love. And so to me, it's like you look at that scripture, and it was the RSV version in 1946, that changed the King James version to something more palatable, something more readable for people of like today, and not King James English.
Right.
And so they had translated that word pederasty, or it was a Greek word. I'm not.
It's I know which one you're talking about. It's like arsona, whatever. Anyway,
There's arsona, and then there's
the Greek one, and then there's the
arsenokotai.
Arsenokotai, which is in Corinthians, and it was I think John. John.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the scholars were arguing that was more to do with rape and pagan ritual practices, than homosexual. And the thing is, from my understanding, RSV basically went back and said, "Oh, scratch that, we were wrong," withdrew it. But then all the other versions are like, "Nope, we're good," and decided to keep it.
Oh yeah, I think that's actually in the 1946 documentary that's coming out here pretty soon, talking about that. But then, I have a whole bunch of issues with translations. Like King James and the new RSV are kind of considered some of the worst translations, because King James is done in a poetic way to kind of rhyme, and also some words were changed over time to attack individuals, such as like the word for poison in certain languages was changed to witch instead in a couple passages, because that was what they were after at that time. And then similar to this scenario, it's like, was this intentional, or was this just like different interpretation kind of idea of an ancient word that nobody really uses?
And in my mind, went at those, whatever the word is that is interpreted for those passages, what I interpret those to mean is that we should not be eager to exploit each other in whatever fashion that partnership might look like. If somebody has, if somebody is in leadership above another group, that the problem becomes when you're using your power to put another person in a different position.
Very patriarchal society back then as well. And so, and that's the thing that Jesus came in and stood that up on its head. I mean, he had a prostitute with him with his disciples, and the women were the first ones to the tomb. I mean, he totally turned that culture on.
They helped him spread his message.
And
after he was risen from the tomb, the women are who went to say this happened.
Yeah.
And as you said, something about it was basically like that one word we were discussing. I can never say it. Arsena or whatever. Anyway, that was. Yeah, you gotta. Yeah, the idea is some of these things is like you gotta take them. You can't just take like the passage, like you have to take the context of the time, because like Corinthians is letters between church. He's literally talking about them integrating into, like, if I recall, there was like a whole prostitution thing with this other church. That was how they made money in certain areas, and he was like, no, that's wrong, you cannot do that. That was what he was kind of talking about.
A great author that I love, his name is Peter Enns, and he said we are reading other people's mail. And I love that.
Yeah,
you got to take that into consideration, because if you try to take it literally word for word, I mean, I just remember hearing about the story about the rich ruler, and they said it would be easier for a camel to go through an eye of a needle, and you're sitting there like, what kind of messed up expression is this? And then I learned, I had an aunt who went to the Holy Land, and she came back and said, there is an actual passageway in Jerusalem, or somewhere in there, where it is so narrow, the camels have to take off all their saddlebags to fit through it. And then it's just like light bulb. It's like,
but if you don't understand, the context of that time, that makes sense.
And that's the thing, is like Jesus was writing for the Galileans, and he referenced things that they would be able to understand. But thousands of years later, those references are kind of like, what are you talking about?
So it sounds to me a similar argument as to like, what do you want to say? The people who are arguing between living constitution versus a traditional, like, just take it as the word kind of concept. And it sounds like this is a similar type of argument happening on the rules within the Methodist churches, basically. Is that a good analogy?
I mean, I would say it really is how we're interpreting the Bible, and then we're all, I think, interpreting what the Book of Discipline says the same. It's pretty clear, but our decisions and what we believe is based on how we interpret what we're reading in the Bible.
And then I just kind of want to bring it back around to the actual vote. So with all this said and done, the only thing that you're really voting on is, because they can't be LGBTQIA plus cannot be pastors, they cannot be deacons, can they be other type of leadership within the church, out of curiosity, or is that basically
they can be, according to the Book of Discipline, there's nothing that specifically says LGBTQIA people can do this and they can't do this, except for being a pastor.
So that's what I mean. Yeah. So technically, they could be like an elder.
Anything that a member can do, I would think an LGBTQIA person.
Okay.
Serving on committees is,
so like, and I think that's like the elder level, is like when you're on like a committee or like leadership role, but you're not. Right? Is that?
I'm not really sure about elders.
We have trustees, which are kind of basically the groundskeepers of the church, and they oversee the facility and the improvements. But we have members, and then we have some people have deacons. We really just have the bishop, who's the head of we have a district superintendent who's in Dodge. And then all of us, the pastors, and all of us.
So really the only thing that this vote is about, because none of the other rules are changing, or not changing, but the only thing this rule is about is whether or not a church can give a gay marriage. That's it.
Well, just to muddy things up a little bit.
Okay, yay, muddy it up. Go ahead. This is why I'm like, this is where my brain is, and probably other people might be there too. So
nothing is, we are not actually voting in our church about whether or not someone can be a pastor. The United Methodist Church, or someone who's LGBTQIA, the United Methodist Church actually is not currently changing that. There is, so the General Conference, which it was supposed to be in 2022. I always get confused. There are too many years in this whole thing.
Yeah.
What do you say? You think it's
Well, 2016 General Conference every 4 years, so
Yeah.
then 2020, and then that
And
COVID.
2020 got canceled due to COVID.
Mhm.
And it was gonna be rescheduled for 2022,
24,
first 2022, but
okay.
still COVID, and because this is again the international conference. So I mean,
Okay.
there's visas involved and
Yep.
all the different issues with all the different countries. So it was a big deal. So it got pushed again to 2024. At that conference, anyone that's attending there can bring any resolution to the table, like,
Right.
and it has to be considered. So the talking point for those who want to disaffiliate is, well, at the 2024 conference, they're going to be considering allowing this.
Allowing
They-
pastors.
Yeah, allowing LGBTQIA.
Okay.
Changing the
pastors
language,
and
Treating
changing the
them
language of
equally.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Anything can be considered.
Sure. So
We don't even actually know what people
Okay.
will bring and how it
So-
will be written.
This doesn't. So right now, what about the marriage part? Can a
at
church
your own discretion.
church
I think-
can't do marriage at all?
No,
Not
for
But you were saying
LGBTQIA.
some are,
Okay.
and then the
Some are.
globalists want them to be penalized for doing that.
right, because it's going against what the Book of Discipline is saying. So they're
Right.
saying
It's already written in there. It's obvious. Okay.
Mhm.
So
then, so they created the global United Methodist Church realized, some people want LGBTQIA marriages and pastors, and they're
Right.
open and want equality. And really what happened, and this is where, like, you think you're tracking, you think you understand this, and all of a sudden we do this. So just get ready for this.
Okay.
They created this paragraph 2553 so that those who wanted equality could disaffiliate and start their own and leave UMC more conservative.
okay.
Okay. However, it didn't specifically say, oh, it's for these people who want
Okay.
equality and LGBTQIA proponents, all of that. It was just, if,
Okay.
because of the current deep conflict within the UMC around issues of human sexuality, a local church should have a limited right under the provisions of this paragraph to disaffiliate for reasons of conscience, blah, blah, blah. So instead of leaving it that way, which really could have, I don't know, to me, just been like straight and narrow, instead, those who want to keep things traditional decided, we think the United Methodist Church is going too far in this equality thing. So they're using the paragraph now to disaffiliate and create their own conservative church. Which has really gotten this confusing because it's.
I was going to say there's nothing that's really with the Global Methodist Church that's a whole lot different than
Other than that
the
factor.
United Methodist Church.
Right.
Other than
Except that
they are going to stick to the Book of Discipline and what that's
So I'll tell you from the optics from somebody from like me on the outsider, especially learning that, I'm like, makes it actually even worse optically, because it's like, what was it? It was 2/3 vote almost. Not quite, because that's what they needed. But
right.
it was like
I mean,
60
I was
wanted to go even more conservative. So UMC's basically just staying down middle. They were going to let people go off and be, I don't know what term you
One
want,
or the other.
more progressive, I guess.
progressive.
Let's call it
Mhm.
more progressive. So, but instead of that happening, you had this offshoot of going way more traditionalist instead. Which,
right.
Yeah.
So
wow. Okay.
um,
Okay.
the
Wow. Okay.
I mean, it was discouraging to see because I thought it would be closer than it
Oh.
was.
We both did. We were. I don't think we really talked that afternoon much. We were just-
I will tell you from when I found out about it. I found out all about this in the same day optically, and then I had to do some quick research. And obviously, I did not have what you guys just gave me. Thank you for filling us in, because a quick web blurb is not going to fill in on all the things you guys just added. I'm like, that makes a little bit more sense. That makes more sense. And then, but that is optically, I mean, it makes anybody, oh, I can't say, because I'm personally, I'm straight cis white guy. So, but I can't imagine that looking good from anybody with LGBTQIA community. And there's a lot of them in our community, and everybody's associated with one. I have plenty of friends and family that are in it.
And we do too. And I think
Are there members in the church?
Um,
That
I think nobody's ever came out.
okay.
Obviously, but I mean, I think I've suspected there were a few here and there. I think they've long gone.
So okay.
But yeah. The thing is, like, if you talk to church members that are more on the conservative side, I mean, they really feel like they love the LGBTQ group. They just say that they love the person, they hate the sin. But the thing is, and what Adam Hamilton, he's out of Leawood, Kansas.
Yeah.
He pastors the Church of the Resurrection. And, he came from that as well. And he said, you don't understand the harm. When you're associating love
100%
with rape,
yes.
with,
Yep.
murder, that you're not doing a favor there.
No.
And so, I mean, that's the thing that I just don't think people are grasping, that is not.
And here's the other factor that they're really not going to, and I think that people that have that argument just do not see it at all, which is somebody in that community, that is them. That's their core. They can't, if they could, more than likely, they would just take that out and be like, you know what, my life would be easier. I'm just going to be straight now from now on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that's so core part of them. It's not them. So if you're calling that the sin, you are hating the person, because they, at least from their perspective, that is them. So that's such a hard thing to do.
Again, I'm straight white.
Yeah, I mean,
but
yeah.
If clearly, if I were not, would I step foot in our church?
That's a great question.
And no, knowing this, knowing like whether or not we allow, I mean, so a lot of people say, well, they're still welcome in our church. Would you feel welcome if we don't allow you to also be a pastor? No.
Yeah.
Or be married. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
You can't.
so
That's the
frustrating.
thing.
Why is that such a heavy conversation? Like, we don't have to talk about, like, there are discussions of marriage and like how to be loyal to each other, all of those things, don't look upon somebody else's partner, all of those things. But those disciplines can be interchanged into a partnership of any kind. And so I don't know, like, it's how frustrating that heterosexuality is the default, and that we don't have to, like, we don't have to defend that because it's the default. And so I don't, like, we are just allowed to, go in and out of church to.
It was interesting because we did have a discussion with our bishop. He came to the church to kind of talk about this earlier on a few years ago. And
that was when we had the three options.
The three options, yes.
Mm-hmm.
But and I talked to this. Our son was just an infant in a little carrier, and this elderly woman came up to us in her wheelchair, and she's like, "Oh, how cute!" And she was just such a sweet lady. And then in the discussion where they're asking if anybody had any questions, I mean, she just went off on why there shouldn't be any gay people in the church, and it's just like a 180 from what we just experienced as straight people, and then what they did. And there was somebody that I've talked to who was in that meeting, who is gay, and he said he had to leave because it was just like, it just got really hostile.
Why?
Yeah,
do we
and why
have
would
to
you want to
think
stay there for your
upon
mental
that
health
so much? Like, why are we directing those kinds of things?
So-
Like, why are we going? I think about this so often that they shouldn't be allowed to be present where we are.
And the thing is, like, I look at it when you look in the Bible and it talks about the fruits of the Spirit and gentleness, patience, peace, kindness,
love,
joy, self-control, all those things. And so like if there's a relationship between this couple and they're gay, their love is still, part of the fruit of the Spirit, and they're just,
Absolutely.
that's
beautiful.
That's generating the same thing as like, but both straight or gay, you can also go into those 7 deadly sins too, and so we're none of us are just because we're straight, not I can't use my words now, but
we're still sinners.
Yes,
yes.
Yeah, like how do we get a pass
Yeah.
because we were born straight? Like so
What
we're just like somebody else gets one more sin than we do? Like
throw the first stone kind of scenario.
I can imagine like going to church and they're like, sorry, you can't marry her. It's a
So
sin.
right.
Okay, so basically it looks like majority of the vote is going GMC. They're going to do another vote at some point in time.
So, sorry, I'm the one who's been on all the committees with all the legal stuff.
Okay.
So technically we are only voting on disaffiliation. If they vote to disaffiliate, then they will have
Then they have to decide that. Right.
Getting to be a part if that happens. Then I should speak for myself.
I'm there with you.
Just blasted that. Then they will have another discussion about what they want to become. So they really could be Nazarene,
Presbyterian,
whatever.
They could completely change. They could go Baptist or Lutheran at some point. Who knows? No, but
I mean, they're most likely going to.
It's most likely to be
stay within Methodist, right?
It's just kind of in that semantics of like, no, technically we are not voting between UMC and GMC currently.
But technically, no. But in the most likely, that's what it's probably is. Yeah. Okay, so
that presents an interesting opportunity then for all of us who, are not going to be a part of whatever church it becomes, where they're looking at the possibility of having another church plant for a UMC if there's enough participation. And there is, I think it was Matthew Vines, if he didn't create it, he was part of the creation team. He's from the Wichita area, and there's this Reconciling Ministries network, and so that a lot of the churches will display that symbol that basically just says, hey, has the pride deal with the cross, and it's like we are so that people are easily can recognize that that's a place that you'll. And so I mean, like personally, I would love to see that type of church, in our area. To minister to those who don't feel safe in a traditional church.
Now speaking of this whole, sorry, Caitlin, go ahead.
Oh yeah, just I love very much people who are both gay and also want to learn what Scripture says and feels a personal connection to God. And so yeah, like I know a lot of people who, that doesn't. What happens is they're driven away from that because of the way that the church says that's how it should be, rather than working on their own individual understanding of what.
Now,
I was just going to say, when all is said and done, for me, what I've looked at is like, what do I want to, get in front of God, and it's like, what'd you do? And I said, I was able to love people. I'd rather say that than I upheld the doctrine.
I will say
to be able to stand there and say, I didn't keep this person out. They're here with me because of me.
I think that's another
I like that sentiment.
Misinterpreted passage about the way that we will be judged in eternity. And I feel like a lot of people forget the part where it says we will be judged the way that we have judged others. Like that is the metric. There are commandments and ways that we should behave and things like that. But what happens when you get there is like you get to be shown the way that you've judged others. And so why wouldn't it be appropriate for that judgment to be shown back to you? Like, did you do any of these things that you're judging other people for?
Yeah. I'm kind of going to bring my own like anecdotal story kind of for this next question. So like, I'm not a member of the church anymore, or any church. And at one point in time, I actually was thinking about going back, and I went back to my old church, and I started talking with them, and the subject of gay people got brought up in the conversation, and basically what it was me going, I'm friends with a lot of gay, bi, lesbian, whatever people, and then basically just told, like, well, then they're sinners and you can't affiliate with them because of that. And that honestly drew me away. That was my final straw, and I was like, okay, well, done. They're nice people, you guys are being jerks, I'm done. So that took me away back in the 90s. And do you think this, because I'm thinking of how this optics is, and a lot of people see it here in our community, do you think that's going to draw more people away, or make them go, oh, I remember that church, I remember that vote, and all they're going to think of is this, they're just anti-gay, and just move on, whether or not they're gay or not, whether they're on that LGBTQIA plus, just hearing that's going to push them away? Do you think that that's going to have an impact on the congregation growth in the future, if you will?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think, it's a lose-lose situation. Because what you're doing is you're taking one church, and honestly is not doing the greatest, in itself, and you're now splitting it into one, maybe two churches that are even weaker. So, I mean, like I said, I mean, I knew that I disagreed with a lot of people in the church, but I was kind of willing to be under that one umbrella where there's some central core things that we believe. We agree to disagree on some other stuff, but we were under that one umbrella, and I thought we were a stronger church because of it. And I just don't see this working out well for either church.
Yeah, certainly for the way that the church is affecting our community, like, because whatever your opinion of it, there are a lot of community members that inside of the church that focus on making sure that the fruits are spread back out into our direct community. So, how would that even look? Okay, so I feel like we haven't quite touched on, like, what does this kind of vote cost? Why would they get the building if they disassociate? What is that going to do to the tithes and incomes of the church? Like, do they really think that it is this kind of decision is survivable in the financial sector?
Those who wish to disaffiliate are very convinced that the money will come and that it will be fine. I am not as convinced. So
I am convinced.
If you separate, they will come.
Right?
Our DS said something about, like, fear will drum up, funds better than anything else. True. And that's what they're saying. Like, if they want it, they will raise the money. I know there's a smaller church that it costs.
I can tell them I've been on many organizations that had that theory, and it never worked. But go on. Sorry.
But there was a smaller church that disaffiliated. It cost the church $9,000 to do that, and one farmer just
brought it up.
There you go.
And now that we've given a dollar figure, we should probably give our church's dollar figures. That was a small church, a rural church. So that figure is determined by our annual conference, which if you're having this conversation somewhere within the region, that's going to be the same. Kansas and Nebraska, we have the same annual conference. If you're discussing with someone in Arizona, for example, it's very different. There's no standard rule, like nationally or internationally, for how they charge. So some conferences are charging a ton, some are not charging a lot. I do feel like our conference is pretty fair about it. So you pay some percentage of, like, an appraisal of our building of some sort. And then 2 years of our M&Ms, which is missions and ministries, that we pay to the annual conference.
I thought we were sending money to Mars.
Yeah.
Incorporated.
missions and ministries.
Yeah, missions and ministries. M&Ms.
And
Nice.
we send those monthly to support more global work, national or
Sure.
global work, and then and also church camps around.
Okay. Yeah.
Just different ministries that the annual conference supports. And then we also have 2 years of our pastors, which our church has 2. We have a pastor and an associate pastor who are a part of the annual conference, has their retirement accounts and just their whole HR stuff.
Sure.
All of the pastors in the annual conference or the region are, a group for that, and we pay into that. So we need to pay the next 2 years of that for them, as well as the percentage of the building and the M&Ms. And so that number seems to be different every time I hear it. The quoted one currently is $145,000 for our church.
Figured that's what it was going to be, 150-ish.
Yep. Also, another part of the cost that is always mentioned, and it's fluctuates, I guess, is the removal of, within 30 days after the church, should they choose to disaffiliate, after 30 days from when that is approved at annual conference, which is June of this year. After 30 days, every cross and flames United Methodist emblem has to be removed from everything, which includes like our hymnals and some churches have that on all the pews.
The sign outside.
The big sign outside.
Yeah, I was gonna say you have to change it. All the branding has to
has to be changed. And so some people think that will be free. Some people think it will be very expensive. So that's where we get a lot of uncertainty.
They've never had to rebrand anything.
Yeah. With exactly
in today's market,
it will.
Yeah. In today's economy.
So are there
the costs? Like my one thing that I just want to make sure is mentioned in my heart here, where I'm frustrated, is I'm on our church's outreach and evangelism committee, and we try to do so much for our community. But every year our budget is smaller and smaller. It's, harder and harder to do the things we want to do. And so it's frustrating to me that we cannot scrounge up enough money for that, but we can scrounge up enough money to disaffiliate. And I think that's one of my biggest frustrations in this experience. When I hear, don't worry about the money, it will come. And I just think, we could continue the way if you would give us, do you know what we could do with those funds instead of sending them? And I want to remain United Methodist. And so like sending them to the annual conference, and the annual conference can do something with it, like great. But also we could do so much more locally if that money stayed here. And so that's just.
Are there any other churches that have done this in your conference yet? So has anybody moved from UMC to the GMC?
Yes. One I know for sure that many people will recognize is Cimarron. When you drive past, their logo is changed on the front.
Leota.
Okay.
There were at annual conference last year, there were 11. And then we had a second online meeting where I did not print this out. The total came to like 56-ish.
Yeah.
You know what's interesting? Talking to a Sublette United Methodist Church member, they said it took them 20 minutes and they voted to stay UMC. And here we've been going since like at least August.
My God. And you guys are
it
almost
took 20 minutes and they're like, yep, we're staying.
So it's a lot of okay. So say that the vote is to not disaffiliate, and so the vote is no, right, or whatever, to not disaffiliate.
Yeah.
So do you think how? Okay, so from this moment, how does either of those decisions change the congregation? Now this discussion has been had, and who is who. And what if it's no? Are those people going to feel welcome? Do they get another opportunity every conference to do this again?
That is a good question. What our pastor has said is that this conversation will be over after the vote. And as far as like a actual, like a structured conversation, I guess, because
okay,
obviously it's still happening.
But the church will not look the same. This is a lose-lose situation, and we are going to lose people either way,
Either side.
no matter which way it goes. And that is sickening. I can't name a single person in our church who I wish wasn't there. I'm so glad everyone is there. And so I don't want to lose anyone. So either way, we know we are going to lose people. But I think what we do either way is we create a poorer church, and it's not all about money, but it is, I mean,
Take away a lot of resources.
it's a lot of what we're trying to do for the community takes money.
Yeah,
so
right.
we have to have some. Plus, just turning on the lights in that big building takes money.
Oh my God.
And so I worry that no matter if we stay or go, if we lose membership, we'll also lose our building anyway because we won't be able to afford it.
So it sounds like this whole thing is just a lose-lose situation, as you're saying, for you guys, for the whole situation, for the community even. We're actually we're getting closer to the end of time. Is there anything you guys that we haven't talked about that you want to, or anything that you want to stress about this scenario?
So we talked a little bit about, we've had a vote. That vote was a test vote. It wasn't the real actual vote yet.
Oh, that was just the test vote. Okay.
That was the test vote. And so that determined if it was over 50% for disaffiliation, then we would let the DS know we wanted to have a real vote. There's no reason to call him out if no one wants to disaffiliate. Turns out we have more than 50% that want to disaffiliate. So we called the the DS, and it is his job now to give us the date for the actual
DS stand for?
District supervisor.
District superintendent. And he actually did come to a meeting that I was at and let us know, like, he's trying to figure out a date, but we are the largest church in his area that has considered this yet. And so he's looking for a second district superintendent to also be there, to just make sure everything runs smoothly and can be on the up and up.
Yep.
And so that date has not yet been set, but we're anticipating it'll be in April. And so if anyone watching is still on the membership books and
y'all share this. We mean it. If you can vote for this vote, come out and vote,
please. So they have to have, I think we covered this before, but they have to have 67%
of those who show up. It's not of the total, it's just of those who show up on that day.
So if the real vote goes the way the test vote goes, it would fail because we wouldn't have 67%. You have to have 2/3 majority in order for the disaffiliation to be approved.
Okay.
So
this is going to be
a lot of information.
Yeah, it is. And I bet I bet you could probably go on for 3 more hours with all the history and everything regarding it, but time being what it is.
Coming home from annual conference, this has been a major focus.
Yeah, I bet your head's been spinning since.
Yeah. So I guess the other thing I want to make sure gets mentioned is that I just really want to make sure anyone watching this knows that I am really proud of the way the members of our church really have handled this. There have been a few occasions I'm like, ooh, that was an interesting way to phrase that. But for the most part, we continue to worship together every Sunday. We continue to show love to one another. Everyone has been respectful. I just want everyone to know that that this is really hard for so many people, but it has not been ugly or negative. And I just really want people to know that I feel like it has been discussed well and done well. And I'm just thankful for that.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you have a large part in making sure that the structure is sound, and so thank you for doing that labor and that emotional work and that mental requirements for everybody else. Because
also, I want to also thank you for coming on the show today for putting this out there, because I know we can make
live
a whole
in
lot
a
of
small
assumptions,
town,
and I'll admit
we
I
have
made
to
a bunch
see
of
each
assumptions.
other every day.
Yes, and we all make assumptions. I made a bunch of assumptions of what was going on. Some of it was right, some of it was way off. So I thank you for coming out here, letting us know, and we hope to see you again in the future, coming on to the show with other events, and hopefully for good news on a vote in the future.
Thanks. I will say, that disclaimer, we both have tried to research this very well and have been living it, but this is our personal experience and
of course,
and understandings.
Well, thank you for coming on to the show with us. It was very, very informative tonight. All right.
What a great conversation you guys just had.
That was
what I expected, but certainly not the level of information. So I was really
and that twist. That twist. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's a lot to unpack.
I wanted to believe that the issue was a larger sort of thing that melded other issues into the thing, but it's really about either penalizing or,
It's funny how the letter they put out didn't mention.
Thank you. That is what I mean. It was very.
That's what the vote is for, but and it's literally the core issue. But the letter didn't mention it at all. Like, they totally danced around it. Whoever came up with that letter should run for office, because it would make a great politician.
It's a very PR letter.
Let me rephrase. They would make an on par to what we have for politicians,
which obviously also led to some of the confusion about, because obviously you go online, and like I said, I did some research and I saw, but all it was pointing to was just the one thing, not any of the others. And also some were saying like the UMC was allowing gay marriage, which apparently it's not. It's just they might.
Okay, from my understanding, so what he said was there are churches that exist in like the Kansas City area or the Topeka area who are doing that outside of the Book of Discipline. And so
exactly
what they want to be able to do is penalize, which I didn't get to ask what that means exactly. I don't know if that means
we kind of ran out of time, but like, what does penalize
that you get
mean?
yeeted out or what that means? But
maybe they can go into Jenny and Trevor can go into the comments and maybe add that into the little thing and let us know what the penalization is for a church that gives a gay marriage, and with that. So
what that exactly means. Yeah, but it goes to a larger conversation that everybody in the United States is having right now. Equality is at the forefront, whether it be LGBTQ plus, race, sex. There's just so many things that are going on.
What I thought was most interesting was that we see in that structure where they have the voting and that the top, like it, I can just see it superimposed on what we're dealing with in the larger area of Kansas, where that topic is being used to create legislation around wedge issues. Like, so this idea that, by the time the conference comes around, they could be asking for anything under the sun, and so that would mean that we would lose more of ourselves. And it's just like, that's a lot of hyperbole. That's a lot of
I feel like the biggest like the whole thing to me that my mind kept going into is the schism of the political spectrum, and the schism of a whole lot of things happening in the world is actually hitting on every single level, from each individual church to this group to that group. It's just like everything is just splitting, and it's generally on this line of inclusion versus not inclusionary kind of ideas. It just seems to be happening on so many different levels.
There's
as an atheist, I hear things like this and I'm like, well, no wonder churches are struggling to continue to get new members and keep the youth members to be a part of it, because I grew up on shows and comic books and things of constantly talking about treat others equally and always protect the weak and things that were supposed to be Jesus's teachings. And it's just mind boggling that millennials and zennials grew up to idolize the right thing and treating each other equally and don't want to participate in things that don't do that anymore. And I guess if God wants to chime in at any point and tell us what they need to do and whether they need to chime in somewhere, this would be a great time to hear from him.
That would be an easy task.
Got
this
a message
is why I
from
dropped out of the stream.
Jenny and Trevor did chime in for the punishment of having a gay marriage in the church. The pastor can become defrocked for what is known as for basically immorality and disobedience, and then and there could be financial ramifications, losing but that's all like HR job stuff.
Yeah.
But basically they lose their job and they're no longer. Well, they might be still members, I guess, but they no longer have an authoritarian presence within the church at that point.
So,
and
I want to thank Trevor
to have that position again, or go to another.
The thing is, every generation, especially right now with the internet and everything, one thing that we find is the inclusionary. Basically, children are exposed to a lot more now, and a lot of it's not bad. It's just exposure to people and cultures through the internet and all that. And what we find is that causes them to be more inclusionary. I think that this is just going to hurt the churches more and more in the future as it goes down the line, because as they become more open and churches seem to, not all, but obviously the chunk of, there's enough of them that are vocal enough and they see that, just kind of like I said with my own personal history, and that was 30 years ago. But now it just seems like that's, I think as the generations become more and more, I guess call it progressive or inclusionary, they're going to want to go to those churches less and less, because if they're feeling
it's not
like
just Christianity either. I think it's religion as a whole,
absolutely,
on a large scale.
Yeah. Anything that causes a separation like that.
Final thought, Whitney.
Final thought. This is a tough one. I think no matter what the decision is right now, the damage is done as far as the optics in the community, unfortunately. And I just see just an onward progression.
I don't know about you guys, but when we were going through the Value Them Both situation, I made mental note, and we have personally boycotted businesses that were openly supporting that. And so to have that information about like a question that we didn't get to, people who want to do the globalist Methodist Church, but who those individuals might employ someone from the LGBTQ community, like what, like how it will cause a ripple effect, not just in the church, but also in the community as well. And it's so frustrating to be dealing with these kinds of things still.
At the same time, though, this is par for the course. There's 40,000 different denominations for Christianity, and they didn't become all these factions because they all got along hunky-dory all the time. Little factions happen, and they split off, and they get named something else, and this is just the next level of that. And some will get left in the dark ages and continue to be an authoritarian that doesn't work in the modern society, and some will continue to flourish and progress. It's going to be an adaptation. It's not the end of Christianity by any means.
So Jenny and Trevor added that the United Methodist Church was split over slavery too. So these issues.
This isn't the first rodeo within as they said.
Fair. what makes me angry is where we are in society, the things that we know as a whole, and it being Garden City and the vibrant colors in our logo, and the welcoming nature that we have of everybody and all the nationalities and the melting pot that we are. And here we are with a discussion about regressing, and it just, I think that's what frustrates me most on the issue and the matter, outside looking in. So we have gone way overboard with our time limit tonight. We will return to politics next week. I should say, not next month. There's a lot that's going on. Oh my gosh, guys!
Yeah, Kansas is going wild.
Kansas has gone wild.
Oh, everything's going wild.
They've restricted how we vote here today. They've eliminated drop-off ballot boxes and eliminated the 3-day grace period for absentee ballots. We have partisan elections. They aren't. What else happened today? Gosh, the list was so much. And education
voting got voted down, or was brought to the floor, was deemed irrelevant.
John Dole, representative for
I'm so curious
District 39
about what's decided. Like, how do things get decided? Like, I've heard them say before, like, those bills didn't even come, like, mostly when, having to do with cannabis, like, they can just be thrown out based on the topic description. And, like, is there not a limit on how
Ty
many?
Masterson is the Senate chair, and he gets to decide. Yes, thank you. He gets to decide what issues are brought to the floor to be discussed, and so it's more or less a dictatorship. As long as the Republicans have the stranglehold on the numbers, it's a dictatorship as far as what bills are discussed.
And if I understand, it's not exactly that he throws it out, but he gets to set the order.
Yes,
then basically they only have time for like 100 out of the 500 that are there.
Well,
right.
And that's what happened with the partisan vote, or partisan elections. We now have partisan elections. If normally, like a school board election, Garden City, it wouldn't be it'd be a non-affiliated race.
Right.
City commission would be a non-affiliated race.
Should be. Yeah.
This new bill eliminates those ordinances. And if one candidate decides to run as a Republican, it becomes a partisan
more division
race.
And more levels. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So does that mean that opens them up to, what is the advantage of that, opening yourself up to
the advantage of that is that you can push off anybody else that you want.
It also keeps active military from being able to serve your community, so they can no longer run for city office or a county commission.
Wow.
So there are a lot of really crazy things that are going on, and we're going to take a deep dive into what's going on to set us up for a very important interview coming up with Senator John Dole himself. Great show, guys. Awesome interview. Super proud of everybody. Thank you to Jennifer, Jenny, and Trevor Hands. I keep saying Jennifer. I have a cousin named Jennifer. We call her Jenny too. So that's why I keep messing it up. But Jenny and Trevor Hands, you guys were great. Thank you for coming on the show and sharing a personal experience with us here, because that's what the show is.
Guts.
It's
no matter what side
it's a personal conversation amongst friends, and we shine a light on the community a little bit, and we love that the community comes back in and clear some things up, so we don't have to speculate so much and have a rumor alert segment that we're going to be having here soon.
People are
come on the show.
So scared of that.
So come on the show and talk about things, or your story
Start
will
getting
be
our
told by the rumor
metrics,
mill.
and it's like they dip out after the rumors because that's all they come in here for.
Well, Caitlin, you want to take us out tonight?
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for tuning in. If you like what you hear, please smash that like button, hit subscribe, and share. Again, if you know someone who is a member of UMC and is allowed to vote, share this with them. Let them know. Maybe there's somebody that hasn't had that education yet.
Yeah.
Make sure that you are present for the vote, if you can. So
let's be inclusive in Garden City, and help those that wish to remain that way too. So, have a good night, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.
Well, test. Better. We'll take a minute to envision it, in the wisdom deriving from a difference of opinion, inquisitive, isn't it? When the picture in the mirror isn't shit, but give it a minute, fix this image and hit the bricks with the viciousness. But don't play, cause one day you'll be saying, you shoulda, coulda, woulda, but my shit just wouldn't drop, cause you wouldn't have, but you're so worried, it was your world. When you hit them with the rhymes, they had no words. Just come back to the flip of the tongue fun that you once had and chug it like a beer and crush that. Go shave your mustache and write it down, cut that, and so much rap again. Oh, I'm getting tired of that. I don't know anymore what they call that. Getting so you know that something's missing. Let's go show 'em what rap is again. Like taking a step out of your front door for the first time and you want more with the sunshine, but you've been locked away, forgetting you don't care. Listen, it's not part of the mission. Just say what you got to say, whether it makes sense. Just a bunch of gibberish, spit from the hip, slipping so sharp, if splitting your lip. You get a grip, cause as good as your shit is, you know it really isn't a big deal. Cause it'll turn heads bound too. It's your purpose, round two. But you gotta open your eyes and realize it's right here. But to open your mind, you gotta try to fight fear and find a light bright enough to ignite and excite peers. But get their attention, I find. You gotta give them a big boom. You're the fuel, and I got my lighter right here. Oh, I'm getting tired of that. I don't know anymore what they call that.